to my channel. Welcome back to Lisa Hart Fitness. Today's video is all about marathon training. Now, if you follow this channel quite regularly, you know that in the background, every now and then I will tend to either provide running tips, marathon-based tips, updates on my personal running journey, because I do actually do a lot of running in the background. Now, today's video is all about how to kickstart and engage in a training program and things that you can focus on in order to help you advance through your training plan as you're going through those first early weeks. Now, the training plan I'm currently following is an 18-week training plan. Now, 18 weeks is a long period of time. There are some that are even longer, but normally you're doing about 3 workouts a week and you're really building that base level of endurance. Most marathon training programs are 12 to 16 weeks. The main reason being is you need to dedicate a lot of time and a lot of effort into your training. So the first thing that you need to do when you start your training plan is, if this is your first marathon, you may not know what your actual capacity and ability is in terms of your running. You may not be doing it to a certain pace, a certain time, heart rate engagement, RPE level. You might just be doing it for the fun of it. And that is where pre-season training really comes into play. So throughout the summer months, I like to take a little bit of a break and not take things as seriously. So what I tend to do is I tend to decrease the number of miles I'm doing per week, but I like to add in a little bit of fun. So for myself, a little bit of fun is adding in a race, and it's super beneficial because it gives an idea of my current level of fitness, but it also allows me to give myself a challenge. Now, when you are training consistently and continually throughout the year, sometimes keeping motivated can be one of the hardest things. So by training in the summer, if you're doing a few runs here and there, adding in 1 or 2 races can give you that motivational boost and then lead you into your training for whatever event you're going to be doing. So in training at the moment, I'm doing about 6 runs a week. A lot of marathon training plans will list anywhere between 3 to 7 days worth of training. Now, obviously 7 days is if you're a super advanced and you're more of an elite marathoner. 6 is really pushing the boat, and 5 and 4 or 5 are more the manageable level of commitment in terms of your training. But when you first start doing a marathon training plan, sometimes you get excitement just as you would do in terms of going into a race. So you might find that your pacing is actually super fast, or faster than what you anticipated. Now, that might sound great to start off with, but what you need to really anticipate is your level of effort. So your RPE, your rate of perceived effort. If you feel that the runs that you're doing, even though you're going a little bit faster, you'll think, yes, I'm starting off in a really good time, but you finish that workout and you're actually quite tired, or you feel less willing to do a run the next day, that actually shows you that the training that you're currently doing is actually too high for what you need to do at this point. Remember, marathons are not won over a sprint, they are a long distance, and in doing so you need to make sure that you're building your aerobic endurance. Now, aerobic means you're using oxygen for energy. So if you find that you're actually running too fast, you're not going to be utilising your aerobic system as efficiently as you should be doing, or you could be doing, and you could be pushing on your lactate threshold. Again, that sounds great because you're trying to push your systems and push your abilities, but you're still not building the base that you need in order to improve aerobically. So the key thing in the first couple of weeks is to really engage not only your RPE but also your heart rate. Now, heart rate isn't as reliable as we like to think. Now, even though looking at your heart rate can be a great tool because it can help you to identify your training zones, but there are several factors that you have to take into play when you come into terms with your heart rate. Now, if it's a hot day, your heart rate's going to be elevated anyway. If you're training and it's a longer run, you might find that your heart rate is higher because you are anticipating the long run and you might be slightly nervous. If it is a normal day, you're not too worried and your heart rate is still high, and maybe you're feeling like you're really pushing the boat and you're really making an effort to run, that is showing that you need to slow down. But when you're training and you have a goal in mind, sometimes the mile pacing that you need to achieve is actually faster than what your body is capable of doing at that point. So even though you go into the mindset of saying, I want to do a so-and-so marathon, I want to do a 3:30 marathon, for example, you need to fit those parameters, which is on the VDOT scale, technically, which is the Jack Daniels chart. Which, if your chart says that you need to run this amount of time for your easy pace, and you're actually finding that you're running that easy pace and you're actually breaking into more of your threshold running, so you're running in the next level of your heart rate zone or the next level of your RPE, you're actually not able to sustain that amount of running for a long period of time. So the best thing to do is actually reevaluate and think, what am I capable of? What is actually a sensible amount of time for me to be running for a long time at a sustained rate of energy? So what I tended to do was, for my first few runs, I was doing what I've probably said to you not to do, and I was actually running quite fast. I was feeling like I was doing really well, but I was actually wearing myself out. And in terms of my heart rate zone, I was pushing into more of that grey zone, which is the zone that doesn't provide any additional benefit. So for the grey zone, which I'll just explain, the grey zone isn't your aerobic base, so you're not building aerobic endurance because you're not utilising that aerobic system efficiently, but you're also not doing like a speed-based workout and really pushing the anaerobic threshold, which is the anaerobic system is without the use of oxygen. So there's these two zones that are really, really beneficial for you. The middle zone just leads you to a plateau. All it does is it burns you out, it makes you tired for the next race, you're pushing yourself all the time, but you're not going to actually get those gains in the long term. So short term you might find that you're benefiting, but in the long term, not so much. So the next thing in terms of training in the early weeks is you're trying to build a level of fitness, but also build your nutrition. Now, if you're really focused on training, and marathon training is something you really want to give your all into, your nutrition is as important, if not more important, than the workouts that you are doing. If you don't fuel yourself prior to your runs, if you don't recover and fuel yourself after your runs, and if you don't fuel yourself during your runs, believe it or not, you're going to burn yourself out. So the first few weeks really allow your body to understand what works well for you in training. So what type of foods can I have that won't make my tummy feel weird and awful when I'm running? So for example, the night before a long run, I like to eat something very plain and very simple. Chicken, potatoes, veg, or chicken, potatoes, salad. I don't want anything spicy, I don't want anything that's going to upset my stomach, because even in the morning, if I've eaten bland food, I'm still going to be worried about needing to go to the toilet about 4 or 5 times before I even head out the door. Which isn't the most pleasant thing to have to say, but unfortunately it's true. Every runner will know this feeling, that having a key nutrition plan and having something you can have consistently, repeatedly, knowing that it's not going to affect your tummy, is the way to go. Work out what you can have before you're running. So I tend to have graham crackers. They're always quite good because they're very bland. They do give me some carbohydrate-based fuel prior to my run. So fueling during your runs is probably one of the most important aspects. Now, fueling during your runs is really important. The main reason for this is because you need to mimic what you're going to do on race day. So particularly for your long runs, you still, in the early weeks, want to make sure that you are taking some form of fuel with you during your runs. Now, this can be a form of gels, it can be a food that you've made, but whatever form of fuel you are using, make sure that you are reading the label so you know whether you need to take it with water or whether you don't. Whether you should be combining it with like an electrolyte-based drink or an electrolyte-based gel. Now, what I would say in terms of using your gels, if you're going to be using a mixture of those, if you're not using like a hydration tablet, which you can add into your drink as a form of electrolytes, and you are using 2 types of gels, what I would suggest is that you have 2 different flavours. The main reason for this is that the electrolyte gels can have so much sodium in it that it can counteract the benefit of what you're trying to actually achieve by replacing those sodium levels that are being taken away from you during your running. So you want to make sure that if you have the 2 flavours, you kind of get an idea of which one you should be having at what time. Also, in taking fuel with you on your run, you can identify how much space you need in your running pack. If you are running a marathon and say you're doing it for 4.5 hours, 5 hours, how many gels are you going to need in order to keep you going for that long? And also, how much can your body take? Remember, when you are running, if you're taking on fuel, because the blood is being redirected to other areas of the body to make sure that that's getting the best possible amount of oxygen, your digestive system might be neglected. But with the neglect of the digestive system receiving the amount of blood and oxygen it needs, that can lead to toilet issues. So what you want to make sure is that the amount of fuel you're taking is enough, but not enough so that you're actually going to cause yourself a problem further down the line. And so for my personal journey, I'm going to tell you why I think actual racing is one of the key things that you can do even in the early stages. Now, normally in a marathon training plan, there will be a tune-up race. Now, a tune-up race is something that mimics the pacing that you need for your marathon, but it won't be the same amount of miles. Remember, you don't want to do the marathon twice over in your training plan, but you might well do a half marathon. But it allowed me to focus on things like fueling during the race, identifying nerves, pre-race nerves, how to deal with those, what to take on my run with me, what to wear, and how to combat the hills, how to combat people around me. So all these factors that you're going to have on race day, imagine having them for the first time and your actual race. It's not something that you want to really think about. So it's always good to do the tune-up races because it gives you all those ideas of a real race without really burning yourself out. So I did mine for my first day of training because it was meant to be a day when I did a long run anyway, and I felt that what I'd done in the summer months had led me up to that point where like I said, I could do it comfortably. So what I did was I did the half marathon, and then I understood what worked well for me and what maybe I needed to change. So the first thing I needed to change was my pacing. The first mile that I went out very fast, but too fast. I got caught up in everything. So even if you're trained and well versed in marathon training or half marathon training, you can still get swept up in the huge crowd of people. The nerves are always there for me, regrettably. I wish they weren't. I wish I was as calm as a cucumber, but I'm not. I'm always a bag of nerves just before my race. And also it gives you a chance to focus on what you do in terms of your warm-up. So the things that I learned in my first tune-up race, one was I warmed up for too long and too early, and I was too jittery. I was doing it at too fast a pace for my warm-up. The second thing, when I first went out, my pacing was too fast, and I found that I really hit a brick wall. And 3, my nerves. I had to really actually think about ways I'm going to improve that. The other thing that hit me, also during the race, that's all before, and then during the race, I hit the wall. About mile 10, mile 9, my legs felt super heavy, and I couldn't figure it out. And then I remembered, I'd rushed back from getting everything done. I'd done a 5-mile run the day before, instead of doing a mini taper. Now, mini tapers before a tune-up race will not affect your overall marathon goal, but they will help you to achieve your mini goal, your tune-up goal. So I found that I was actually running too fast and too far the day before my half marathon, so my legs were already heavy by that point. So going forward from that, the first couple of weeks I really focused on how I was going to actually anticipate going in those early miles and really taking my time and getting my stride. Then I looked into ways to calm myself. Now, yoga is not something that I'm really good at. I don't have a lot of patience. I wish I did have more, but I've actually started incorporating yoga into my training plan, and I've found that it's worked wonders because it really allows you to focus on building that strength and building that inner awareness of yourself. So I went into my second race not feeling as nervous as before. Now I'll go into what happened during that race and why it was different, but in a positive way. So I thought about the ways that I was going to fuel my race, and I actually had enough gels with me that time. So going into race number 2, which was about a month later, I was more aware of what I wanted to take. I thought more about what I was going to do in terms of my pacing. So I actually went out a little bit slower than what I did with my first run. And I was aiming at about a 7:15 minute mile, which was much more feasible than the 6:45, 6:30 that I basically broke in my first mile a month back. Now that might look like it's more of a setback because I'm actually slowing down, but I PR'd. I did a 1:34 marathon a month later. So you can see that I'm beaming. That's the fastest half marathon that I've ever done in a race-based setting. So super pleased with that. So what can that do to help you? In terms of your marathon training, if you're in the early stages, remember motivation is super important, and it might be easy to be motivated the first couple of weeks, and then after that you're thinking, I've still got to do 14 or 10 weeks or 16 weeks of training. How do you keep motivated? Know that there is progress along the way. So in terms of your progress, stick with those easy runs. Make sure that the easy runs you're doing are easy, because then you'll find over time that your easy pace that was maybe 10 minutes 2 months ago, then another 8 weeks later, it might actually be 9 minutes 40 is your really easy pace, and you're still in your aerobic zone. So trust the process and know that doing the right way of training, not training in that grey zone, but actually sticking in those easy zones and hitting those speed training every now and then is the most beneficial thing for you. So moving forward, the next few weeks I'm going to be upping my mileage quite substantially, still at that 10%, still at a 10% range, but it quickly builds up to how much you do increase your weekly mileage. When you start doing those sort of bits, really digging deep and know that there are other people out there getting up at 5 a.m. in the morning to complete their run before their work day. I'll be back with another video in a few weeks to update you where I am about the halfway point in my training plan, what I've been doing and how I've been improving and how you can improve in that midpoint, the bit which feels like the black hole because you feel like you're not getting anywhere in your training. But believe me, you are. If you are marathon training at the moment, keep going. You are doing amazing work and you are doing it for, if you're doing it for a charity, you're doing it for a great event. If you're doing it for yourself, you are doing it for a brilliant reason because you're focusing on your own health and your own fitness. If you liked today's video, please make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions at all about anything to do with marathon training, please make sure that you put it in the comment section below. I'm happy to get back to you and help you with your own training journey. And if you like this channel and you like all the content that's rolling out, please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button. But other than that, for me, it's bye for now.
Yeah, that baby I got you.